All right, welcome back to the KFYR Plus News Desk. And today we are joined by Damian Fortune, CEO of Centrix and a leading cybersecurity expert, to discuss the growing threat of Quishing, a QR code scam that can compromise your personal data. Today we will learn how to stay safe in a world of scan and go convenience. Mr. Fortune, thank you for your time today. Sure appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jay. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So, for the viewers' sake, what exactly is Quishing and how does it differ from traditional phishing attacks?
Yep. So it's an unfortunately named cyber attack or scam that involves leveraging those QR codes, little barcode things that you see around town now, to launch either malicious websites or malicious software onto your mobile devices to install programs that can steal your information.
Now, why have the QR codes become such an attractive target for cyber criminals?
It's a ubiquity thing. So, a couple of years ago, they were really only being used by services like UPS to track your packages, but now you see them everywhere from restaurant menus to checkout lanes in convenience stores and everywhere in between. Folks are now using them to advertise yard sales and things like that. So, whenever something kind of reaches that critical mass of ubiquity, the bad guys find that a compelling target to move in and start scamming people.
Yeah, I think I remember it because of COVID. When you go to a restaurant, they never had actual menus to touch. You would scan it and you'd use your own phone. So that's how I remember it becoming more popular. So, what makes this Quishing harder to detect compared to, let's say, an email phishing or an SMS scam?
Yep. So there's just fewer steps in between for a person to kind of evaluate whether or not this is something they should be interacting with. So, if you think of scanning a QR code at a restaurant, for example, to get that menu, you're pointing your camera at the code and clicking on the screen, and then you're launching some website that you hope is the actual menu of the restaurant. But in the cases of Quishing, could be a website made up to look like the menu that's also launching some malicious code in the background.
And we're seeing it more and more on television advertisements as well.
Mhm. Yep, exactly right. It's a little harder for the bad guys to do to inject a fraudulent
Hmm.
QR code on something like the screens, but the physical landscape, the again menus at restaurants or advertisements, posters that you see around town, pamphlets, those sorts of things are now kind of ripe for doing those sorts of things, where either uh, folks are laying out physical copies of things that are made up just with a replacement QR code, but we're seeing Quishing stickers very commonly now, where you're going into those restaurants or up to those posters and you're just putting another QR code on top of an existing one.
And what signs should the users now look for to detect a tampered or malicious QR code?
So from a physical perspective, the sticker presence is a dead giveaway. We tell everyone to immediately kind of question what they're looking at if they see a sticker placed on top of something else. Um, the other big one is if you hold your cell phone up to one of those QR codes before you actually click on
Hmm.
it, there'll be a little hovering preview of the website that you're
Hmm.
going to be taken to when you scan that QR code. If you look at that, a lot of times you can tell it doesn't really sound like an e-commerce site, or this URL looks a little funky. I don't necessarily want to click through to that. So it's taking that additional just second to look at what you're scanning before you actually click through.
Okay. Are there certain environments, such as restaurants, hotels, public spaces, more vulnerable than others?
That's exactly it. So most of the time, as I mentioned, this is something where someone's coming in and physically replacing or installing these QR codes. So areas where you have a lot of foot traffic, where they're open to the public, restaurants, hotel lobbies, those sorts of things that you mentioned are exactly the places where these things are more common.
And how can businesses ensure that their QR codes now remain secure and trustworthy?
Mm. So we've been advising folks to put the codes themselves behind something. So generally, that's putting a pane of glass in front of a poster that's been put up, or putting a transparent placemat, or even laminating the menus so that you've got some sort of layer between this QR code and the public, so that if there is something that's being added on top of it, it's a little bit more conspicuous and easy to tell.
Are there any tools or apps maybe that can help verify a QR safety?
There are a few out there. They're still kind of experimental, just because the database of legitimate websites to click through is still kind of being built out. But there are a few. QR Safety is one, QR Safe, and there are some others that are being built in. Apple and Android have done a pretty good job now of adding that preview function in before you actually click through on the QR codes. The next version of that software will actually have a tiny window that displays a little preview thumbnail of the website that you'd be going to. So we expect those tools to get better over time, but they're still very nascent.
Okay, let's say that, Damien, I go through to the website. What should someone do immediately if they suspect that they've been scanned by a malicious QR code?
Yep, absolutely. So depending on what you're interacting with, if this is something where if it's an imposter website where you've put in your username and password, you want to immediately change that password. Any passwords, not that you should have any, but that overlap with that particular website, you're going to want to also change as well. If you interacted and you suspect that you're now dealing with financial fraud as a part of this Quishing campaign, notifying the your bank as well as the credit reporting agencies is the very next step that you should do. Services like Experian actually offer a free credit monitoring service now, so you can let them know, hey, I've interacted with a website or some sort of software that I shouldn't have. Can you keep an eye out for any new charges or new things that are being signed up in my name, those sorts of things.
Okay. And do you see this evolving, this Quishing evolving as QR codes become more integrated in our daily lives?
Absolutely. This is just like every other tool that we've seen kind of spin up over the last few years, whether it's AI and now the QR codes. They're going to get more advanced. QR codes still have a long way to go before they're really truly saturated. We talk about billboards and commercials and restaurant menus, but there's still tons of other places that they can show up. As we start seeing more and more of these things in the public forum, I expect that the scamming will get more frequent and worse before it gets better.
Okay. And finally, what are your top three tips for consumers to protect themselves from Quishing scams?
Yeah, so the big one that we tell everyone is to enable two-factor authentication on anything that's important. So that's a text message with a code or using one of the softwares that send you a rotating code or have you confirm in some way outside of just logging in that you need access to a website. That's the most effective way to protect yourself against scams like this. Using password managing software, whether that's one built into your web browser like a Google Chrome or a separate software like a 1Password is also very important. And then finally, anytime you're engaging with anything that involves e-commerce online, using some sort of payment intermediary, put as many layers between your bank account and the vendor or the purported vendor as possible. So using a debit card is a bad idea. Using a credit card is a better idea. Using a credit card and a payment intermediary like a PayPal or Venmo is a better idea because of the redundant layers of protection. So in general, those are big three in terms of practices, but overarchingly, just taking that additional second, the bad guys kind of bank on you being distracted or doing something out of the sake of convenience or speed. And a lot of times, if you just breathe for a second, look at something and ask yourself if this looks like something you should really be interacting with, then you can tell whether it's a scam or not.
Just another scam that we've got to keep our eyes open for us, folks. Damien Fortune, thank you so much. I sure appreciate the insight today.
All right. Take care, Jay. Yeah.
Thank you. 8 minutes past the hour. Let's take a break. We're right back here with the day's top stories next on KFYR Plus.